Hi everyone. Today I'll be looking at the labelling of chord inversions. I'll initially discuss this topic in relation to triads before then discussing inversions of altered and extended chords. Before I do so, however, let's establish what an inversion is. A chord is said to be inverted or in inversion when the root note is not in the lowest part of the chord. In other words, one of the chord's other notes is in the lowest part. With a triad, this other note could either be the third or the fifth of the chord. If we take a C major triad, for example, and place the C note in the lowest part, the triad is in root position. If we then take another note of the triad, in this case the third, and put it in the lowest part, the triad is in first inversion. Placing the triad's fifth in the lowest part puts the triad in second inversion. Notice that once the relevant note is in the lowest part, any number of the triad's other notes may be placed above it without altering the inversion. Also, note that the lowest part does not necessarily have to be a low sounding note, it simply needs to be the lowest note of the triad. In the following example, the C major triad is again in first inversion. The E note is high in the texture, but because it is still lower than the other notes of the triad, it is the lowest part. For inversions of seventh chords, the same principles apply, although because there are now 4 notes, an additional label must be added. 4 common methods of labeling seventh chords are in use. The first uses the same labels as for triads, but adds a third inversion when the seventh of the seventh chord is in the lowest part. Another method uses the letters A, B, C, and D to denote root position and the chord's 3 inversions. Another uses figured bass notation. In this method, numbers showing the intervals between each note and the various inversions and root position are written beneath the relevant chord. Root position is labelled 753 but is typically abbreviated to 7. The 3 refers to the interval between the root note and the third of the chord, the 5 to the interval between the root note and the fifth, and the 7 to the interval between the root note and seventh. First inversion is labelled 653 but is typically abbreviated to 65. The 3 now refers to the interval between the third of the chord, which is now in the lowest part, and the fifth of the chord. The 5 refers to the interval between the third and the seventh, and the 6 refers to the interval between the third and the root note. Second inversion is labelled 643, but is typically abbreviated to 43. The 3 refers to the interval between the fifth of the chord, which is now in the lowest part, and the seventh of the chord. The 4 refers to the interval between the fifth and the root note, and the 6 refers to the interval between the fifth and the third. And the final inversion is labelled 642, but is typically abbreviated to 42. The 2 refers to the interval between the seventh of the chord, which is now in the lowest part, and the root note of the chord. The 4 refers to the interval between the seventh and the third, and the 6 refers to the interval between the seventh and the fifth. These labels are always assigned to the relevant positions of the chord, even when the notes in the actual music may be arranged using a different order of intervals. Here, for example, the notes of a root position 7th chord are arranged from the root note in the order 5-7-3, but would still be labelled 7-5-3 using figured bass notation. The final common method of labelling 7th chords is as slash chords. With slash chord notation, the type of chord is written to the left of the slash, and the note in the lowest part is written to the right. For example, a C major triad in first inversion would be written as follows. A C dominant 7th chord in second inversion as follows. A C6 chord in third inversion as follows, and a C13th chord in first inversion as follows. Inversions of extended chords such as 6th, 9th, 11th and 13th chords and any altered notes they contain can be difficult to label using triadic or alphabetical labels and can be cumbersome to notate using figured-based notation. For this reason, these chords are typically notated using slash chord notation, as it conveys the type of chord and the note in the lowest part in a concise and practical manner. You will, however, need some knowledge of the notes in the chord to identify the inversion. For example, with the following inverted dominant 13th chord, you would need to know that the F sharp in the lowest part is the altered 11th of the chord. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. See you next time.